Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're now ready to begin Chapter 3 of the text, How People Learn. Before I get started, I just want to kind of compliment you all on the discussions that are taking place on the discussion board. Y'all are given some really good responses and insightful ideas and points of view concerning every one of the questions that I've given you. I was especially interested in reading all of your responses to the question on Test 2, your first day at work. Seems that some of you had some horror stories to tell, but you have survived. Others seem to have a very good first few weeks or initial entry into the teaching profession. And so I hate to say, but it looks like you people are pretty much the exception rather than the rule. Most of us were just given our keys, had some major catching up to do before we got started and started to get a routine down. So personally, I guess I'm going to kind of get on my soapbox, but we have got to do something to help brand new teachers ease into the profession. Having them start out like many of you have is a total disgrace, and there's something we can do about it. But as of right now, nobody, or very few people, I should say, very few people around the state are doing anything about it. So I'll get off my soapbox now and move on to Chapter 3, How People Learn. Obviously, our classrooms ought to have two things happening in them, and those are the fundamental processes of education. That is teaching, done by a qualified and dedicated teacher who has the resources at his or her command to get the job done, and learning on the part of students. But let's take a look at some learning theories. And people have been studying learning for a long time, ever since the early 20th century and late 19th century. There were some researchers who began to look at what it takes for people to learn. And we'll have some definitions of learning. Learning is relatively permanent. Once you and I learn to do something, our brain paths sort of get molded, and those paths stay rigid and remember what we've learned. And the more we do it, the more ingrained those paths get into our brains. Now, another thing, it's one thing to learn it, but it's another thing to observe it in a person's behavior. That person ought to be able to show that they've learned that that lesson, or learn that skill, learn that bit of information that they need to know. And so they sort of make that become a part of them and add to their body of knowledge. And learning can also take place as a result of contacts with the environment. I love to watch young children as they go about playing outside or playing inside, how their expressions and their actions, that they're just like little sponges soaking in everything within that environment to make them grow and mature intellectually. I'm kind of worried, and again I guess I'll get back on my soapbox, but a generation ago, when children wanted to learn, they went outside and played. I just don't see where, sitting in a classroom for 6 hours a day and then going home and sitting on the couch and playing video games sort of gives them a lot of stimulus. Obviously, playing the game, I guess, then they got different levels that they've got to achieve, but you're sitting right there, not going outside and interacting with your environment on the outside and on the inside. And let's face it. Feel free to disagree with me if you feel that way, because it's just my opinion, and that's it for what it's worth. So we got some theories of learning out there. Kind of continue on that same vein here. We got some theorists and researchers who are also dealing with learning concepts and the teacher. And we've got 4 different schools of thought concerning learning and teaching. The first has to deal with a whole lot of motivation theories. There's a school of thought that says a person is not ready to learn unless they're motivated. After 20 years in a classroom, I can attest to that one firsthand. You got a student who is definitely unmotivated, doesn't want to be there. You're going to have a tough time. I've had a tough time trying to get them to learn anything. But when a person is motivated, sees the need, and kind of sees the outcome, and there's all kinds of things that would motivate people. I saw this from some of your responses that you try to fire those students up, saying, if you study well, then you're going to make a whole lot of money going to work. And so maybe that money is kind of a motivator. Maybe it's the grades that are a motivator. Maybe mom and dad said, you make good grades, we'll buy you a car. Well, maybe that's not the best thing, but hey, you're 17, 18 years old, and that is high on your list of priorities. Hey, maybe you'll do what it takes to learn. So it's basically trying to find something on the part of the teacher that teacher can kind of plug into that student and kind of know what it takes to motivate him. And everybody's different. Everybody has a different key to help them motivate. And so it's incumbent upon the teacher to get to know their students, kind of see what makes them tick. And so that's pretty much all I've got there for motivation theories. We have another school of thought that deals with transfer of learning theories. So we learn all the kinds of dates and things that took place in American history. How do we take that information and transfer it to where we are right now? I'll be hard pressed to tell you, what some of the dates in American history would kind of transfer to 2011, 2012, I don't know. But yet, back in industrial arts at Iota High School, we had a drafting section that we did, and I was able to kind of transfer that knowledge that I had back then in that industrial arts class to when I was in engineering graphics in LSUE, and then later on at LSU when I took some extra engineering graphics courses, and then obviously when I started teaching drafting at the technical college level. I was able to transfer those skills and knowledge. And so we really need to kind of look at why people need to learn whatever it is we're trying to teach them, and then how they can take that knowledge and then transfer it into real life situations. And it's incumbent upon us to kind of help make that connection to the student, because maybe he or she won't be able to kind of do that right then and there. Certainly those of us who have kind of experienced life long enough kind of have seen those connections. We've learned about them firsthand, but maybe our students don't have that depth of experience. And then I guess another thing that kind of ties into that is trying to draw connections to things. One of the most fascinating documentaries I ever watched took place in the I guess the early 80s on public broadcasting, and it was a British documentary called Connections. And these historians drew connections to great events, to inventions and things like that, to some, years and years and years. This was developed, and then this gave somebody else an idea, and somebody took that and developed it further, and so we see that there was a whole lot of transfer taking place right there, even from very connections you wouldn't even think would be possible. And so I was always just fascinated to see what kind of connections they would make on a weekly basis. And I think the series lasted about a month or two. And so they had a number of episodes, and that really covered a whole lot of stuff. But how do we kind of build on our learning? And obviously with our little video that we saw, we see that right now is very difficult to do, because what we learn one day changes the next day, and then it doesn't last very long till that information is obsolete, and we've gone on to new things. And so I'm to the point now that I just try to get my students to be able to be, like I've said before, good consumers of knowledge, being able to find information and valid and honest information that they can use. And so that kind of leads us up to retention theories. How do we kind of help to stick, what we have learned to kind of stick to us? If you've read any kind of research on adult learning, you find that as we grow older, because of our brains and our physiology, the physiology of aging, we retain sort of less and less and less as time goes on, and it becomes a little bit harder and harder for us to learn things, because those neural pathways are a little bit more difficult to establish. But obviously, as medical research has shown, that the more stimulus our brains have at all ages of our lifespan, the more and more we can kind of at least hold back the effects of aging on our brain. And so you can learn stuff when you're 85 years old just like whenever you were 15. And so it depends upon how much we can retain. Now obviously, getting back to vocational education, we've known that for a long time. And so that's why we make our students do things over and over and over and over again, so they can retain it, they can learn it. It becomes second nature to them. And then finally, we talk about reinforcement theories. These are basically behavioral kinds of theories where you're trying to give somebody some kind of stimulus for a right answer or some kind of reward for good behavior or mastering whatever you're trying to teach them. The classic example of Pavlov's dog applies to people. You give somebody enough stimulus for getting the right behavior, and pretty much it's going to be ingrained to them. And let's face it, part of being a teacher is giving and knowing when to give some positive reinforcement. And let's face it, a whole lot of people right now have heard a whole lot of negative things. You can't do this, you're no good, blah blah blah. Well, when you get a right answer from a student, you tell them you did a good job, you got an A, make them feel good about themselves. That kind of success helps to breed more success. Because we've had a whole lot of people right now that come through our doors, especially at our school, that haven't had a whole lot of success in life. And any kind of successes that they do have, we certainly want to celebrate that and make them feel good about it so that they will want to do that again. And that kind of ties into motivation. With success comes more success. So, those are your 4 learning theories. Now, some principles of learning. Learning is a process. You and I aren't born with all the knowledge that we would need to know. Once we're born, school is in session. We begin learning and learning and learning and learning until we take our last breath. But it's a process. Sometimes it's a very slow process. Sometimes it can be accelerated. But if it's a process, then it has steps. And so this kind of leads us into the next bulleted point. Your styles and rates of learning will vary. We have some very intuitive learners. Some people have the ability to kind of make connections to things and, not have to have any kind of help from us. They kind of see the bigger picture of things. That, I guess, compared to the next point, the incremental learners, where they have to have their learning in little bites, kind of like the Pac-Man learning process. They take one little bite, they digest that, and then they go to the next one, and they digest that, and they just kind of go maybe slowly, but yet they take it bit by bit by bit. And after a while, you kind of see that they've made some significant progress. This is more like vocational education in general, because all of our programs are kind of broke down into the component parts of the knowledge that students need to know in welding, machine shop, truck driving, drafting, you name it. And so we've broken down all those tasks, all that knowledge into increments. And so we feed our students just a little bit every day as they build from simple skills to more and more and more complex skills. So, the next point, the principle of readiness. That, in a nutshell, implies that until a learner is ready to learn is not going to take place. They have to be prepared and ready. It's kind of like having a clean glass to pour some tea into. You got to get it ready. And so there are some points underneath there. Life experiences, application, the knowledge of progress, repetition, the principle of effect, primacy, intensity, and I've been afraid of that one, reciprocity. I know I butchered that one, but let's kind of go through each one of these real quick. Life experiences. Every student comes to us with some kind of life experiences. They may have never did what we're going to ask them to do before, never even dreamed about it. They may have done this all their lives. But those life experiences will be in effect whenever we begin our teaching and learning process. Now, for an example, in a negative way, we have a truck driving program at our school, and we get some potential students who have driven trucks before, but were not trained how to do them. And one of the things that they have a problem with is shifting. And our instructors just have horror stories of how these students don't shift our trucks that we have properly, and how hard it is to break them of that habit. Because once they've learned it, they're pretty much stuck with it, and it's difficult to show them a different way because of their experience. Application. If a student can see where they can apply that knowledge. I had one business student a few years back. Her name was Sherry. Sherry had gone to college, but she told me the reason she wasn't in college and didn't finish her 4-year degree, to her parents' disappointment, was that she did not see any application in what she was doing. And she was certainly smart enough to be able to finish off a 4-year degree and probably grad school. But she said that she saw no relevancy in the application of what she was taught. And then she came to us and just tore up our business program. She just topped out with a 4.0 and everything, because she could see some application from what she was learning whenever she would go to work. And she's not the only one. Knowledge of progress. If a student knows that they're making progress, that they're learning, and that they're doing well, they're going to continue doing well. And that kind of leads into repetition. Whenever you're doing things over and over and over and over again, you're building those neural pathways and ingraining them in your brain. And after a while, these skills become like second nature to you because of the repetition. And I'm going to kind of get back on my soapbox here. This is something that concerns me very, very deeply as a vocational educator, and especially in the technical college system. When I first began teaching, our drafting classes were well above 2,000 clock hours in length. Some were 2,500 clock hours, some were around 2,200. Excuse me. So we were well above 2,000 clock hours of student instruction. When we became a technical college system in 1999, the first thing they began to do was to cut our curriculums down from like 2-year curriculums with over 2,000 hours to 18-month programs. So we dropped almost, let's say, down to 18 and 1500 clock hours of instruction. There are some things happening right now that may even cut that time even further. My point is that we cannot teach skills to the degree that industry demands and expects if we don't have the time to let our students learn those skills and do them repeatedly. Because in all honesty, they don't have the time to be able to learn them on the job. That employer is going to expect them to be work ready and have a very, very short learning curve so that they can make them some money. Because as long as that student is learning, they are not productive to the degree that that employer would want. And so that's a major concern of mine that I would really like to see addressed on the part of the LCTCS system, to come up with some balanced time that we could have to kind of get some more skill levels back into our programs of study. I think our industries would like to see that happen. For the other four, the principle of effect, primacy, intensity, and recidency. Oh, yeah, I am messing that one up. But these all deal with, I guess, the level of learning, how intensely we sort of have our environments ready for our students to learn. And let's face it, you can be the greatest teacher in the world. If you have a lousy classroom, not a whole lot that you can do. We want to try to get our students in the best environment that we can to have them learn, and to do the best that we can to be able to teach them what they need to know. Now, we try at our school to try to model what's out there in industry. We try to operate our school like they would see when they go to work. In every one of our shops, and every one of our even the school climate itself, we want to try to look at it as a business to get them prepared for the world of work. And so we try to be very intense in that. Primacy is the need that's there, the need to learn. We need it now. We don't have time to waste. And let's face it, students like to waste time. And so we try to focus on that need to know, and need to know it now, and to learn it so you can move on. So we'll go ahead and move on here. There are, I guess this model has 3 levels of learning. I think those are good enough for us. We have level 1, which is general knowledge. This is general knowledge that everybody has. Level 2 is a working knowledge, which is sort of a step up. I guess my example of that would be sort of for you welders. I know a little bit about welding. I've done it before. I know the parts of the equipment. I know how everything works. I know you're supposed to do welds. I've done some welds, but I am not a welder. I have a working knowledge of it. But I guarantee you, I'm not going to be passing a whole lot of welding tests with my skill level. Now, that helps me though to be able to talk to our welding students whenever they come into class. I have at least a working knowledge when they'll talk about some of the processes that they're involved in. At least I'm not going to look at them with my mouth hanging out and with a blank look on my face. I can at least hold a conversation with them. Level 3 is a qualified knowledge, where you got the knowledge, you got the skills to be able to do just about anything you want in that field of endeavor. Now, obviously, it takes a whole lot more to get to level 3 than from level 1, but you build on that over a period of time. Let's take a little while to take a look at individual differences. Every student that walks in the door is like a blank blackboard, but yet that's about the only similarity you got right there. Everybody's different. You got age differences, differences in direction, what's the future holding for these people, what do they want to do, what are their goals, their aspirations, ego involvement. You know, I've always, when I do ego involvement, I always think about the class clowns, and there's always one in every class. I don't know how in the world that happens, but there's always one of them that has to be an entertainer, that thinks that their life here on earth is to entertain people, where others, you never hear any word out of them. But that ego, their whole personality and psychology is, are they involved? Do they want to do this? Are they focused? Or are they there to play, to kind of get that positive reinforcement from their peers that they're entertaining, they're funny, and all those other things. I guess the example that I'll give you about that was when I flunked out of LSU E. I hung around with a lot of people who like to play. Then I went to trade school there in Jennings at the Morgan Smith campus. And I was in auto mechanics class with a bunch of guys that had spent 1 year after being drafted shuffling around and dodging bullets in the rice paddies of Vietnam. I can guarantee you these guys were not there to play. They had just had one of the most miserable years of their life, and they were ready to go on and move on with life. So their ego involvement was intense, to learn what they had to learn so they could move on and go to work, or else start their own business, which is what a lot of them wanted to do with their GI Bills. And obviously life experiences. When we deal with adults, they have a whole wealth of experience, good and bad. And then the younger they are, they've had experiences, good and bad, but yet they aren't to the level of more adults. Expectations. Students come in with all kinds of expectations. Some are realistic, some aren't. But whether they are valid or invalid, everybody comes in with some kind of expectations. I think y'all all came in with some kind of expectations about this course. Maybe it may meet your expectations. Maybe it might exceed your expectations. It also might not. But understand that every one of our students has some level of expectation when they come into a course. And you and I need to do what we can to meet or exceed them. Then obviously intelligence. That's they were born with that. We all have a capacity to learn. If you ever take the testing class, we have a whole chapter on intelligence tests, and we go into all of the aspects of intelligence. And so some people have very high IQs. They can learn all kinds of things. Some people don't have high IQs. They may not be particle physicists, or else maybe Supreme Court justices, but they can still fix our cars, clean up do some work on our plumbing systems, fix our cars' air conditioners, get our products and services along the interstates to their destination. Gender. Whether we want to believe it or not, men and women are different. They're very, very different. Physically, that's obvious. But even on a intellectual, psychological level, we're very, very different. And recent research has shown that to a great extent. I know for a while it was not politically correct to say that girls and boys were kind of gender specific in math, that boys did better in math than girls do. Well, the research has shown that to be true. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to just, blow it off, or are we going to deal with it? We're trying to close that gap. But yet there are some differences that you and I have got to be able to account for when it comes to gender. And then finally, the level of concentration. How well can somebody concentrate on the task that's at hand? They may have some kind of psychological problem where they have attention deficit disorder, where it's very, very difficult to concentrate for any period of time. I know a couple of people, a couple of adults, that they cannot sit down for any longer than maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then they're moved on to something else. Their attention spans are about like that of children. You kind of expect that with a 5 or 6 year old, that they have very, very short attention spans, and as we grow, our attention spans increase, so we can concentrate on what it is we're doing. But for some people, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And so sometimes having people sitting down in nice, neat rows in a classroom is not that's the last thing that they need to do. They need to be up and around, doing things, getting all kinds of stimuli from all kinds of activities that are taking place. It looks like chaos maybe in that classroom. And, sometimes administrators have a problem with that. When they hear all kind of noise going on and students up and down and talking and doing things, and the chairs are all in circles, or all over the place. They don't like to see that because they like order. But yet you could have your classroom desks in nice little neat rows with students sitting there quietly and with their heads in a book, and no learning's taking place. And you can have the chaos and noise in an activity type of classroom where learning is just getting done every minute. So, a little different way to look at things, but the level of concentration that people have is really, really important in learning. And that kind of leads into students with disabilities. There are some students that we're going to get that have problems that we've got to be able to deal with. We might have students who are deaf or hard of hearing, students who are blind. We might have some that are mentally disabled or orthopedically disabled. They might have other disabilities. We have some who are disadvantaged economically, educationally. And then we have some maybe from foreign countries that have different cultural things that are different than us. A young man from a Middle Eastern country is going to have a hard time having girls in his class, because where he's come from, girls don't go to class with boys, and so that'll be a cultural difference. If a student's deaf, has difficulty hearing, then they're going to have issues dealing with power tools or things, with automotive kind of things where you need to hear things, and what you hear gives you some idea of what's going on there with that engine or with that power tool, whether it's straining or something like that. The blind, very difficult thing to deal with, especially for those kinds of occupations where vision is a must. Mentally disabled students, there are some that just don't have the capacity to be able to do some things, and we need to find the right level of learning and work where they can be successful. What do we do with students that are in wheelchairs or may have cerebral palsy or something like that? Can we accommodate them in our classrooms? Maybe we can. Maybe we can't. Those students with other disabilities, like let's say, what if a student has AIDS, or what if a student has some other kind of disability that's out there? Maybe they're not blind, but maybe they have a problem with their sight. They might be legally blind. What do we do? So that pretty much wraps up this little chapter on learning styles. What I want to do right now is to not shut off the video. I'm going to continue recording, because what I want to do is to capture what I want you to do for your assignment for this chapter. So if you'll follow along with me, I'm going to go ahead and close my PowerPoint. When I got through the end of my presentation, I wanted to try to record you a little set of directions, and I got shut down on that. So what I've done is to do a short little video and try to see if I can merge the two together, splice them together. So you may see a little difference in sound and so forth, but what I want to do is to go over the assignment for chapter 3 with you. And so here's what happens. I'm going to escape out of my PowerPoint if I can. Okay, there we are. And let's close this. And here's chapter 3 in Joule. And so let's go to chapter 3, learning a style assignments. It says click the link and take the short Avatar's online learning styles inventory test 1 and 2. You will find the test in the frame on the left side of the screen. Take both tests to see if your resulting learning style is consistent. Once you are done with the 2 tests, go on to the chapter 3 assignment link and type your results in the submission box and submit it for a grade. Then go to chapter 3 forum and share your learning style with your classmates. So let's see what everybody's learning style is. I took the test, 2 tests on already, and I've got my learning style posted, so you can kind of take a look at that, see where I stand. And so let's go ahead and click on the link here, and that's what it looks like. And here are your two tests where the little pointer is. I'll click on test 1, let you see what it looks like. It's just a little quiz there, and you just tell me, read the question and say seldom, sometimes, or often. There's about 30 questions, and whenever you're done, click down here at the bottom. It says tell me my learning style, and it'll tell you. Just kind of write it down, and then go to the second test. It looks a little different. All you do is click the box that applies to you, just go on down the line. You got about almost 50 questions, and then click the box that tells me my learning style, and that's it. See what the answers are. If they're the same, then go to the link up here, and just tell me what your learning style is, and then go to the forum and tell me and the rest of people what's your learning style. My guess is that probably about 75% of us are going to be visual learners. We'll see if I'm right or wrong about that. But that's pretty much your assignment for chapter 3. Very simple, very easy to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording and get everything ready for you for chapter 3.